Kinda Sounds Smart. I'm your host, Stella Green, and I'm going to tell you something that may shock you. In the pageant that is the casual social situation, it's important to remember that your conversational partners are really more your conversational rivals. That's right, everybody, conversation is in fact a contest, and at the first sign of a factual error, the shark starts circling. See how I mixed metaphors just now? This was a conversation, that would have been the end of me. That's why today's lesson is, keep it brief. Because the less time you spend talking, the less time they have to realize that your knowledge of any given topic essentially amounts to trivia. To help you master the art of not talking for a very long time, rather than give you a lot of information about one topic, I'm going to give you the key facts about 3 topics. The theme? Debunked scientific theories. Just say one, say it quick, and remember, you're on a battlefield. With sharks. Spontaneous generation theory. The initial question that sparked this theory was, where do maggots and rotting meat come from? And the perhaps unduly resounding answer from the scientific community was, thin air. Like, literally nowhere. Circa 300 BCE, Aristotle observed that if meat was left out, maggots would appear in it. Definitely not understanding that maggots eventually mature into flies, and possibly not understanding that they can, move. He believed them to be generating spontaneously. Aristotle determined that some creatures had the ability to just sort of pop, and then they're alive. More intellectually put, that life can appear out of nowhere. Taking this idea and just running with it, during the 1600s, a scientist by the name of John Baptiste von Helmont put out what can only be described as spontaneous generation recipes. For example, how to make mice. First, find an open container. Then add a few grains of wheat and some dirty shirts. Don't have dirty shirts? Don't worry. These can be substituted for dirty rags. Now let these sit for 21 days, and when you come back, mice. Don't like mice? How about scorpions? To make a scorpion, first get a brick. Next, carve a hollow into that brick. Then fill that hollow with basil and cover the whole mess with another brick. Now you're going to want to let that sit for a few days so the basil fumes get a chance to leaven, and then you have a nice fresh scorpion with which to do whatever one does with a scorpion. Now I don't want to harp on spontaneous generation theory too much because I understand that theories get disproven every day and everyone's just doing their best and all that, but do scorpions even like basil? Spontaneous human combustion. As you may or may not, but definitely should know, oxygen is involved in breathing. Oxygen is also involved in combustion, and when we discovered this around the late 1700s, we were faced with the burning question, how is oxygen a part of both combustion and breathing? Well, it's just gotta be that we're, full of fire, right? Like that there is a slow but steady combustion reaction taking place inside of all of us at all times that has hitherto gone unnoticed, right? Well, the scientists of yesteryear sure seem to think so, and this gave rise to the idea that should hot temper or fever flare up in one's person, they could just zing, go up in flames. Theories for how spontaneous combustion occurs range from the plausible, like static electricity buildup, to Larry Arnold. Mr. Arnold believed that there was a subatomic particle called a pyroton that could interact with cells to create an explosion. Now, I know this sounds a little far-fetched, but remember, fire is complex, and if you throw in there the idea of atoms, it's understandable how someone could still think this back in 1895. Oh, yeah, no. 1995. This theory was actually published in 1995, by which point we were several decades deep into the study of subatomic particles. We had email. It wasn't a thing yet, but we had it. We knew what was in an atom, Larry Arnold. There is no excuse to be made for the pyroton. I also don't know how I got this, because I thought I was alone in this. Is library? Vampires spread plague. We didn't understand fire, we didn't understand where scorpions came from, and we sure as heck didn't understand how decomposition worked. Let's set the scene. It's sometime during the Middle Ages, and you're on an island near Venice. Even though it's Venice, it's still the Middle Ages, so you're not having a great time. On this particular night, you and your buddy are carrying your recently deceased old Aunt So-and-so out to your local mass tomb. Again, this is the Middle Ages, so this is all pretty standard. That is until you open up that tomb. Inside, you find that, to your horror, almost all of the bodies have mouths drenched in... Oh my gosh, is that blood? Well, everyone at the time was pretty sure it was, and assuming the bodies hadn't been buried that way, that could only mean one thing. Vampires. The dead are rising! They're going out at night and feasting on the living! They must be the ones spreading the plague all over the gosh darn place! No, no, and no. It turned out that the dark red fluid was a dark red herring, or just a normal red herring. Yes, it was in fact not the blood of vampire victims. It was much worse than that. You see, when human bodies decay, their stomachs release what is called purge fluid, which is this lovely blackish red ooze that spills up out of the innards of corpses and leaks out of their mouths and or noses, usually and. The myth/scientific theory, pretty much tomato during the Middle Ages, went on to say that before vampires could exit their not-so-final resting places, they had to first chew through their burial shrouds. This idea came from the holes that purge fluid would wear in the cloth shrouds, making them look chewed on. Before a vampire is strong enough to chew through their shroud, all you have to do for protection is wear a shirt. That was a joke. This one isn't. If you're looking for a fix later down the line, cram a brick in their mouths. It seems to me that science has historically put more stock in the power of bricks than they were perhaps due. That concludes this episode of How to Sound Smart. Remember today's lesson? Keep it brief. And in that spirit, we're done.